Hey everyone, I'm really intrigued for this discussion today as we talk about the next wave of phishing and AI-driven social engineering attacks that are being fueled by a lot of things, including exposed employee data. We're talking to a true expert innovator in the field from Optery. Paul, how are you?
Doing well, Evan. Thanks for having me on.
Great. Well, thanks for being here. Before we dive in, if you could introduce yourself, your journey, and how do you describe Optery these days?
Yeah, so Paul Mander, I'm Chief Commercial Officer here at Optery for Business. My journey, so I've had numerous go-to-market leadership roles at different companies in the ad tech and the marketing technology space. So I spent many years helping businesses use data and personal data for all things advertising and marketing. So during that time, I learned how data traverses the internet and gets to places, and in this case, in today's day and age, it gets to places that you really don't want it to from a security perspective. So I'm excited to be here at Optery on the other side of this and helping solve the problem created by that personal data traversing the internet and going to places that you don't want it. So what does Optery for Business do? We help organizations close a major security gap, and that is that exposed employee data on data broker websites. This is a security gap because threat actors use that information to identify their targets and then use it to conduct the social engineering campaigns across various different channels. So what we do is we help organizations reduce the risk around that exposed information by submitting opt-out requests at scale and reducing the attack surface that's made available that exists because of this personal data being made available.
Amazing. And I've been the victim of social engineering attacks, and it's not fun. It's pretty scary stuff. So you recently completed a sort of survey on social engineering in the enterprise. I took a quick look, pretty eye-opening findings, but what surprised you and the team most?
Yeah, there were a few things, right? So the survey went out to about over 400 cybersecurity leaders across mid-market and enterprise companies, and mostly senior leaders. So these are folks that are really on the front lines, if you will. They're the types of organizations that are being targeted and attacked quite a bit. There were a few things that really jumped out. I think the first was 96% of respondents, so that's pretty much everyone we surveyed, reported an increase in social engineering attempts within the last 12 months. And of those 96%, 90% almost said that the social engineering attempts were moderately or highly personalized. And as we dug further into the data, a few other things, the ones that, so of those almost 90% that, who were attacked with those highly or moderately personalized attacks, 74% of them said that those social engineering attacks led to credential compromise. So that means the majority of the ones that, when they were attacked and the attacks were successful, there were consequences for organizations in terms of compromised credentials. The other thing that jumped out at us in the survey was there's no single channel that dominates, right? Traditionally, people think of phishing emails, and it was really, no single channel dominated. It was pretty split across email, phone, SMS, social media, impersonation. So I think it was telling us that people are seeing that this isn't just an email or a phishing problem. It goes across multiple channels. And the last thing, and I think this was the thing for us at Optery that we were really believed, and it was good to see data that confirmed this, is that the enterprises said that the data brokers and people search sites were the most significant source of attacker intelligence for the threat actors. So this means people get where this problem is. Traditionally, everyone thinks, okay, it's the dark web, or data being available on social media is a bigger threat. Those weren't the biggest sources for attacker reconnaissance. It's this data broker data, and the industry is realizing that, is understanding the threat that these data brokers pose.
You hear this term data brokers. Who are these shadowy, data brokers? Don't have names that any of us would recognize. And what exactly makes them such a gold mine for attackers?
Yeah, there are certainly ones are shadowy, like like you said there, right? There's a shell company of a shell company of a shell company, and you need someone like Brian Krebs to find out who exactly works there. But there's others that are legitimate, publicly traded companies that are operating in an honest way as well, right? Someone like a Zoom Info is a company I think many people have heard of. So, but no matter whether they're shady or legitimate businesses, what data brokers are companies that compile detailed dossiers of personal information on people. So these are things like people's names, addresses, phone numbers. For companies, their org charts, people's names of people's relatives and such. And they sell that information and that data. And in the act of selling that information, it's often put on their website and then indexed by search engines and LLMs. So it's very easy to find this data. So because of how easy it is to find this data, then data brokers pose this big threat for social engineering attacks. How so? If you're a threat actor and you want to conduct a social engineering attack, I got to find out where you work. Okay, maybe I can go to LinkedIn, sure, but then I need to know how to contact you and then how to make my message convincing. So that's when the content of these data broker profiles creates such a threat for enterprises, in that now threat actors can create very detailed messages and know their entire company's org chart and rapid fire these social engineering attacks.
Amazing. And what kinds of exposed data are some of the biggest red flags? Obviously, phone numbers are key. Phone numbers are tied into everything almost these days. Home addresses, easily found. I guess family connections, social profiles. What else?
Yeah, honestly, I don't know if I would say there's a hierarchy. Everything out there has a risk, right? So, from the B2B perspective, there's companies that publish org charts, and for a threat actor who's looking to conduct social engineering against an enterprise, knowing the org chart, knowing who reports to who, that's a proxy for understanding. Okay, who would have, if I breach this person, they would potentially have access to this type of information, right? There's other data brokers that have the names of people's relatives. So your spouse, right, your kids, and okay, maybe for a social engineering attack on the surface, you're like, that's not good, but how will that help with an enterprise social engineering attack? Well, often people use those things as passwords, right? Or at a personal level, certainly identity challenges are mother's maiden name and those sorts of things. And if people who answer those questions honestly, it poses that sort of risk. Obviously, like you said, phone numbers, email addresses, home addresses, those are the direct means by which to contact and find people. But all these data points, your employment history, all these data points can be used in some way, shape, or form for social engineering. Because even if it's not a way by which to contact someone, I have this information about you. And if I'm trying to craft a social engineering attack, this information can be used to make my message more convincing, or to help me impersonate someone you may know. I was like, oh, this person knows me, and they would know this thing about me based on my employment, right? The data broker may have given me this one piece of information about my past employment, and I can then connect other dots as a threat actor to make my message more convincing.
Scary stuff. So privacy, security are kind of two sides of the same coin. I haven't actually worked in a large enterprise in 10 years, but what is the state of play these days with employee privacy? Is this still treated separately from security, or are they, companies starting to look at all aspects of these things?
Yeah, that was from the survey. I think it's clear that we have moved beyond that. Okay, this is a privacy thing and not a security thing. Academically, there was always that conversation. Well, privacy is security. And I say academic because it's not wrong in and of itself, but in practice, I don't think it was ever put into practice. But this is clearly being viewed as a cybersecurity problem now, because of the fact that the availability of data is in and of itself the security risk, right? If this data was not available, I don't want to say it's impossible. It's certainly not impossible to do without this data, but it's definitely more difficult to conduct a social engineering attack without the availability of this data. So there are privacy benefits for people being protected by it, but it is certainly a security issue. And I think the biggest telltale sign of that is that the budget for attacking this personal data problem is coming from the cybersecurity budget. It's not coming from a compliance budget or anything like that. So when the businesses put their money where their mouth is, then the things are shifting.
Interesting. And I assume many employees can be at risk. It's not just executives. Typically, that was the juicy target, but people in operations and security themselves, right?
Yeah, that was, that's certainly something I've mused quite a bit about in many different forums. Traditionally, this, hey, will thing for enterprises, and the reason for that is actually more related to physical security. Executives are the public face of the company, and if someone has a disagreement, they might come and dox or harass the executive or their families. And so historically, it was this sort of this desire to solve this data broker data problem was limited to executives. But the fact is, and the survey data showed, that attackers are, in fact, executives were the fourth most targeted role in the survey. IT was number one, HR was number two, and finance was number three, then executives. And
Wow.
The reason for that is that the attackers really, they're looking for access, relationships, operational leverage, right? The IT, of course, has access to privileges, source code, right? Those sorts of things. Obviously, HR has all some of the juiciest data at any enterprise about the actual people there and who's there. The finance team often targets of fake invoices. They can move money, right? So they're always going to be targeted. And then executives, of course, they have access to a lot of privileged information. And the joke I always made as well is that, executives never really answer emails or phone calls anyway, right? I mean, if you work with executives, they're always hard to reach. So I think maybe attackers perhaps realize that as well. But, all kidding aside is, it traditionally what has been executives, and, but the data showed that other groups are being attacked. And I think at this point, companies are just beginning to realize this and think of it not just as an executive protection problem, but let's think about which of these groups pose the greatest risk for the company and expand this protection beyond executives.
Fascinating. So talk a little bit about Optery for Business. If you want to get proactive, not just reactive here, how does organizations work with you and how should they start?
Yeah, so what we do at Optery for Business is we have patented technology that will continuously scan these data broker websites for instances of personal data. And then at scale, we will submit opt-out or deletion requests to get that data removed. So that effectively, I alluded to this earlier, a lot of enterprises think about the attack surface and thinking about their endpoints and the website and other ways you can get their infrastructure. But this personal data is really part of the enterprise attack surface because these are the entry points for social engineering attacks. So by working with Optery for Business, it's really saying we're thinking about our attack surface that to include this exposed employee data. And as you said, it is being proactive, right? By removing this data, you're making your enterprise not as easy a target for social engineering, right? Because if we're many minutes into this and we haven't said the word AI yet, right? And it's 2026, and I guess that's maybe not allowed, right? But AI is, I think, a big piece of this. We certainly use AI to submit some of these opt-out requests at scale, and but AI also makes this a bigger threat for enterprises, and because now threat actors can leverage AI and create social engineering attacks of speed and scale that we've never seen before, with way less technical sophistication that was required before. So by partnering with Optery for Business, it's about being proactive, as you mentioned, and reducing that PII-based attack surface for enterprises.
Interesting. And in addition to that, I mean, what other words of wisdom or takeaways can you offer CISOs or IT teams, security teams? What can they get started with today if this is an area they haven't, frankly, even considered?
Yeah, I mean, of course, do the things that I think many people are already doing with and what people traditionally think of when they're defending against social engineering and breaches that may result from it. Deploy MFA, deploy email security tools, do the user training, and then start thinking proactively, as you said. Just start playing offense. And the way to start doing that is understand where this data is exposed, and don't just limit the thinking to executives, as the survey data showed, right? Executives are only the fourth most targeted group. Think about what are the highest risk roles at your company, and depending on the type of company you are, there might be some other types of roles. At a healthcare company, someone who has access to PHI is a role that's higher risk, right? So think about the highest risk roles at your company and treat their exposed data as part of your attack surface, just as you do those API endpoints and so forth.
Well, fantastic advice. Really important mission. What are you up to the next few weeks, month, couple of quarters? What's on your radar? I assume you're out in the world at events and meetings and other get-togethers, getting the word out.
Yeah. I think the next big one for us is we'll be at the GSX conference in mid-September, the Global Security Exchange down in Atlanta. So we'll have a presence there, and we're working on some new product releases as well, and better data and better reporting of around the exposures and the removals that we're doing, and constantly adding more support for additional data brokers. So quite a few interesting things we're working on here at Optery, and hopefully we'll see people around at GSX.
All right. Well, important work. Thanks for what you do, and good luck to us all. Yeah. Onwards and upwards. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Evan. See ya.
And thanks everyone for listening, watching. Also check out our TV show, TechImpact.tv, monthly on Bloomberg Television and Fox Business. Thanks everyone.